welcome to the Ghost of Harrnehal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 91 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today, we're discussing chapter 17 of Clash of Kings, Tyrion 4.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter. We're going to try not to spoil any future plot points for you, and hopefully, we're going to provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes, they'll provide some additional information, which will be particularly handy if you're not reading along with us. How are you, Mackelly?
I am doing just fine. How about you?
Not too bad. Been a busy week.
Yeah. Yes, it has.
So I'm past my second vaccination now. And so
Right.
I went to a friend's house and we played a board game.
Wow. Did you remember how?
It was a brand new board game, so I never knew. So I hadn't forgotten because I didn't know.
Did you ever do the board game thing with your family, with the Zoom call board game?
Yes, it worked beautifully.
Oh, good.
It worked really well. We had a good time.
What'd you play? Pandemic?
Pandemic, yeah.
That's one of your go-to games, although not Legacy, right? Just regular Pandemic.
Yeah, that was just regular. But last night was Pandemic Legacy Season 0.
Okay.
It was very good.
That's one of your all-time favorites, right?
Well, this is Season 0. I've not played this one, so it's, the rules are different.
So it's different than the other Pandemic Legacies.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the same concept, but it's set in a different time era, and you've got different goals. It was a really good start. I mean, really good. We were very excited.
How many? Just two of you?
4 of us.
4, okay.
4 of us, yeah.
Exciting.
The same people. We've played the other 2 seasons of it together,
yes.
The 4 of us. And,
right.
God, it's good. I mean, it was edge of the seat stuff last night. It was like we couldn't afford anything to go wrong in the last 3 turns. But the one thing it lends itself to, this game, is over-analysis. I noticed at one point we had our next 16 actions planned out. I was like, we're going too far, guys. We've got to let the chips fall where they may at some point.
It's funny that you say edge of the seat excitement playing board games, because I think Stacy and probably a lot of other people would consider edge of the seat during board games just about to fall off of it to fall asleep.
She's wrong on many things. This is one of them.
That's right. Yeah. Well, we just had a guy come and clean our gutters because it's long overdue.
Wow, be still my beating heart.
And we have 3 skylights, and so I had talked to him on the phone. I had asked, could you clean the skylights while he was up there? And he said, yeah, I'll give you a quote on those when I get there. Well, he came to the door, and, I said, all right, do your thing. Let me know if you need me. And I realized I forgot to get a quote from him on the skylight. So I could hear him with a leaf blower up on the... my roof at some spots is 3 stories high because we have a daylight basement. So it feels like miles looking up. I can only imagine what it looks like looking down. And so I'm like, oh, I can hear him. So I go out the front door and I look up and I kind of get his attention, and he's looking down at me, and he's holding himself up there with his left hand by holding a rope, and his right hand has the leaf blower blowing the leaves out of the gutters. And I'm like, oh my goodness, is that the method he uses? That seems very precarious. If his hands are sweaty, what does he do when it comes to, late August or something?
Achoo! Uh-oh.
Exactly. So, I thought, whew, that's one way to do it, I guess.
I thought he was going to spend a minute doing the leaf blowing of the skylights and then charge you $100 for it. I thought that's how this story was going to end.
No, he did. He seemed to have done a very good job. So, very, very happy with it.
All right, we got a lot to talk about, so let's do. And clearly we don't have any useful banter. So let's get,
Skylights and board games.
Show. How do we leave Tyrion? It wasn't very long ago. Tyrion was only 2 chapters ago. This is the closest approach of any 2 consecutive chapters by a single person that I can think of. Certainly, no one's had back-to-back chapters.
Yeah, Bran was in a Tyrion sandwich.
He was, yeah. So last time we saw Tyrion, even I remember this, he was working with the small council to curb Cersei's response to the completely true accusations being made by Stannis Baratheon about her son's father. Tyrion was commissioning the forging of a huge chain by the city's smiths and armourers, and he was overtly visiting Chataya's brothel while covertly visiting Shay. Why don't we give him the summary?
Okay, well, snuggle in, children, because this might be a long one. Tyrion breakfasts with Grand Maester Pycelle in his chambers below the rookery. Tyrion produces 2 letters, well, technically 1 letter, 2 copies of the same letter, to be sent to Dorne with haste. As Pycelle sends the mail, Tyrion notices how many precious metal links there are in the Maester's chain, and examines an array of potions. He notices tears of lice, and pockets a dusty bottle of something else. Pycelle returns burning with curiosity about what the letter contains, but Tyrion won't be drawn. He leaves Pycelle with instructions not to tell anyone, and as Tyrion leaves, he thinks in his head, 1.
Tyrion departs and meets with Bronn, who's carefully watching the sparring going on in the yard and ignoring the pretty girls walking by. Tyrion doesn't understand. Bronn lists off the various appointments that Tyrion has on offer: a meal with the mythical Tanda Stokesworth, her uncomely daughter, unmentioned but certainly on the menu. A banker from Braavos wants to see the king about repayment on a loan. Tyrion deflects him to Littlefinger. A trident lordling wants recompense for the destruction of his home in the war. Tyrion arranges some favours to buy the man off. A delegation of food sellers wants to see him too, but Tyrion has nothing to offer them.
Last up is Sir Allister Thorne, newly arrived from the Wall with the animated severed hand of Other. Tyrion was ready to see a brother of the Night's Watch, but when he learned it was Thorne, he changed his mind. Instead, he arranged a sparse cell for him. At this point, Cersei and her retinue ride past, haughty and smug as ever. Along with Sir Boris Blunt of the Kingsguard, she has Hallin, the pyromancer, and Cersei and Tyrion's cousin Sir Lancel Lannister in tow. She's going to survey the new city defenses and challenges Tyrion that he should be doing more. She's troubled by news of Renly marching towards King's Landing down the Rose Road, but Tyrion observes that he's being quite leisurely about it.
Cersei wants Tywin's army in King's Landing as soon as possible, and Jaime freed. She storms off, because Tyrion can do nothing about either of those things.
Right.
Tyrion reflects that Stannis is actually the bigger threat than Renly. Renly might be beloved of the small folk, but Stannis is a battle-hardened menace. Varys' spies are not coming back from Dragonstone, but Lysene war galleys have been spotted, and certainly aren't part of Team Lannister. Next up on Tyrion's day is Petyr Baelish and Tyrion Solar. He's dressed in his finery and flashing a very familiar Valyrian steel dagger. Tyrion asks about it, Littlefinger shows it, and offers it as a gift to Tyrion. The imp refuses, and both know that the other knows the backstory.
Tyrion muses on Petyr's meteoric rise through the ranks at King's Landing. While the two talk, King Joffrey is attempting to crossbow hares that are being put in his path out in the yard below the window. Killing small animals. Perfect perfect thing for Joffrey to be doing.
Yes. for someone with a personality disorder.
Right. Tyrion asks Baelish to arrange a marriage between Myrcella and Robert Arynn. In return, Tyrion will provide the identity of Lysa's husband's murderer if she will send her forces to help defend King's Landing from Renly, not to oppose the Riverlands in the north, to be specific there. Tyrion will give Littlefinger Harrnehal if he can make this happen, but Cersei is not to know. She would not approve. Petyr is concerned since the last person to do a favor for the crown and be rewarded with Harrnehal is now manning the wall. But the prize is too great to pass up, so Littlefinger agrees to set off on the mission in 2 weeks' time, and as Littlefinger leaves, Tyrion thinks in his head, 2.
To round out his busy morning, Tyrion is paid a visit by Lord Varys. The spider chides Tyrion for making Pycelle fret so much over the secret letter to Dorne. Tyrion offers to fill Varys in on his proposal to Doran Martell, the Lord of Dorne, but Varys says he already knows. He recounts how Dorne has stayed quiet to this point, and due to their hatred of the Lannisters, it's been assumed that they would join Renly's cause at some point. The pair discuss Tyrion's offer of a spot on the small council for Doran Martell, and his sister Elya's murderer brought to justice, dead or alive. Varys knows it's not enough, so guesses at the final piece of the pie, Tommen. He'll be sent to Sunspear to foster. Varys admits it's a great plan, minus one key detail, Cersei's consent. When Tyrion responds that what she doesn't know won't hurt, Varys asks what happens if she finds out before the plans are settled. Tyrion says then he will know the person who told her is his enemy.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrnehal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. Yep. And thinks 3. When
Yes.
Varys giggles at that point,
Yes.
and Tyrion thinks in his head 3. So he's counting these 1, 2, 3.
But Varys he treats differently than the first two, because Varys, he actually tells him that if you tell Cersei, I will know that you are my enemy.
Right. True. Yes.
Yeah.
That is a difference.
But no, he's still pulling a trick on Varys too, because he's making
surely
Varys believe that what they're discussing here is the exact contents of the letter. But that's not necessarily true.
Absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely he's up to something because he's ticking them off 1, 2, 3. So
yeah.
But boy, this chapter was just jam-packed with information and talking points to the point where I don't think we have time to hit every single bit of detail like I would like to.
When he talks to Bronn, it reminds me of my own mornings, just jam-packed with meetings and people wanting my time and attention.
Right. Yeah. But he starts his morning off bright and early in Grand Maester Pycelle's chambers. And I think maybe George Martin was hungry while writing this chapter, because he talks an awful lot about food in this chapter. He
does. In fact, he obsesses about several things, I've noticed.
Yes.
He obsesses about plums and plum-coloured things.
Plums and honey.
Honey
specifically.
Yeah.
I counted 7 mentions of the word plum and 6 mentions of the word honey.
Wow.
He has stewed plums, plum-colored doublet. Harrnehal was one of the richest plums. The porridge needed butter and honey. Littlefinger's furtive bite of a honeycomb. Martell reaching for the honeycomb. So, yes, a lot of plums and honey talk here.
Yeah. I wonder if that is sort of like just a direct sort of like. I mean, to a certain extent, it makes your mouth water as a reader. I wonder if that's to sort of contrast with what we know is going on outside the castle walls, where the people of King's Landing are going hungry.
Yes, that could be. Sure.
Yeah.
And Pycelle mentions that his table is sparse because he's trying to do his part because of the food shortage. And I thought, these are the things I want you to be advertising, and make it at least seem like the castle is trying to cut back as well.
Of course, he was served plums, oatmeal, eggs.
Right.
So it wasn't that sparse. I mean, it wasn't like, a full English, but, there was a decent breakfast.
It wasn't a bowl of warm broth.
Right. Tyrion is a bit snooty about Pycelle's food as well. I mean, one thing I'll say here, Tyrion hired the best cook in King's Landing for himself. So wherever he goes, he's going to get lesser food than he gets back home.
It's all about perspective.
Right.
He also mentions that most of the food coming into the city is coming from the Stokeworth and Rosby areas, because they're one of the few places that have yet to be affected by the war. So
right. They're in the Crown lands towards the Riverlands, but not actually in the Riverlands, right?
Right, yes, they're much too close to King's Landing. He also mentions that most of the food coming from Stokeworth and Rosby are going to the castle and the garrison. So it's not helping the small folk a whole great deal.
But actually, that just makes me think back to the last Arya chapter. It seems strange to me that they are burning and destroying the towns and freeholds south of Harrnehal. They should be preserving those and then getting all that food to King's Landing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, that they could take over those without any problem because they're not defended enough. You don't have to terrorize them just for the sake of it. And King's Landing's running out of food because they're not getting anything coming in.
That's a very good point. Yeah. Tywin's tactic is putting his own family in harm's way because they have a hungry, growing populace surrounding the Red Keep.
Burn and pillage between you and your enemy, but don't do it behind your own forces because you're just hurting yourself.
You've already got those covered.
Right. They're yours. They're not going anywhere.
Right. So there's plenty of small folk in King's Landing right now. Gather up some of them, tell them you'll pay them a little bit and put them out in the
drag them back to the fields that they just ran away from because you terrorized them.
They're like, but this is my own land.
Shut up and farm it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're solving all the problems for everyone here again.
Right, yeah. I think we're done.
Yeah. So, Tyrion gives Pycelle the letter for Doran Martell. He gives it in duplicate. And I never thought of that before, but I mean, these ravens must go missing from time to time. I mean, there are bigger birds out there, so sending 2 copies makes a certain amount of sense. Although he didn't actually tell Pycelle to attach them to 2 different birds, so it might be like one bird with one on each leg.
You got to spell everything out, I guess.
Yeah. But they were sealed with wax, but not just sealed. I think of these as being rolled up and then the seal to hold it together, but also sealed on the 2 ends, so you couldn't sort of look in and see what was going on. Yeah,
the description did mention it was sealed on both sides, both ends. Yeah. So maybe it is the actual ends of the seals or ends of the parchment. But yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, at this point in the chapter, we don't know what he's sending to Doran. I mean, we do now because we finished the chapter, but...
Well, no, but we don't, right? We don't.
Oh, we don't. You're right. We know what he's letting on that's been put in the letter.
From watching the TV show, I believe he's told Pycelle something else.
Okay.
Because in the TV show, he tells Pycelle, verbally he tells Pycelle what he's sending to Dorne.
Okay. Huh.
And it is not what he just told Varys.
But we know one thing about the Martells. I mean, yeah, it makes sense. Martells are an untapped resource. They're just sitting there right now, waiting to be tagged in. So it certainly makes sense to reach out an olive branch. But we know that the Martells hate the Lannisters with a passion. So this olive branch needs to be more like an olive log or an entire olive tree.
Which certainly a wedding to one of the crown, one of Cersei's children, makes a certain amount of sense. I think, to be honest though, given the level of hatred, I think it has to be Joffrey.
Sure, I could see that.
Because he's just, they are despised, but then this basically is kind of like the getting back to where they used to be, because they used to be, the Martells were married into the Targaryens, and their daughter was set to become queen.
Right.
If
Rhaegar.
If Aerys had died,
Rhaegar was still alive, yeah.
Exactly. Rhaegar would have become king, she would have been queen. So now this would be sort of like getting them back to their previous status. Arrange a marriage between a Martell and Joffrey, and you've got they can say, okay, we're back to where we belong.
Right. Yeah, we're skipping ahead to the end of the chapter with what I'm about to say, but so the plan is to send, or at least the plan that Tyrion lets on here, is to send Tommen to Dorne, but Arianne, Doran Martell's daughter, is like a early 20s, and Tommen is a child. So sending him to Sunspear is like, what are they going to do with him? They have to wait a while before he's. I guess they don't have to. I mean, there's marriages to little babies, like we saw at Joffrey's name day tournament. But it would make sense that they would at least wait for him to hit his teenage years before they marry Arianne off. But then by then, she'd be nearing 30. So
That's true. That is very true.
But like you said, marrying him off to Joffrey marrying her off to Joffrey would make a lot more sense.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghosts Harrnehal. You can find the link in our show notes.
Yeah. Yes, in terms of both age and in terms of what you have to offer the Martells. But maybe the plan, again, jumping to the end of the chapter, the plan of sending Tommen as basically a hostage.
Yes, right.
Is not like, we want you to come and fight for us. It's, you've got him, stay on the sidelines.
Right. It's collateral, we're trusting you here, take our youngest and hold him as collateral. Yeah. But also with the Martell, with the Arianne Martell thing is, and even Petyr Baelish, we keep skipping ahead in this chapter, but
it's fine. We never said we'd have a linear discussion about
right. Well, Littlefinger says that save your breath, Tyrion, if you're going to ask me to help make a trade for Jaime for Sansa, because first of all, Joffrey's not going to give up his plaything, and we've talked a little bit about this in the past. What is the point of still going forward with marrying Sansa to Joffrey at this point? Marrying Joffrey to Arianne Martell, that
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
So
you need to secure whatever allies you can.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So maybe that's what's in the letter that Pycelle sent. We don't know. It was sealed.
Right. One thing that Tyrion notices is that Maester Pycelle's Maester's chain has a lot of gold, silver, and platinum, that they heavily outnumber the baser metals. And I think that is more about Tyrion being a Lannister and noting that the expensive metals, noticing those over the baser metals more than what they represent, because the gold, silver, and platinum, the gold equates to math and economy, because remember, when you master a subject, you form a link in your chain.
Yeah.
So gold is for math and economy, the silver is for medicine and healing type stuff, and the platinum has not been revealed to my knowledge yet. So,
but here's my counter to that. He's just adding chains based on the stuff he's being given by Cersei. You and I have concluded that he's a lackey of Cersei Lannister.
Right. We have.
And of these three, the most likely to betray Tyrion's confidence.
Yes.
But it's interesting that gold is math and economy. Basically, every time he fleeces someone and gets money from Cersei, he forges another gold chain.
That's a good point.
See how good I am at the economy thing.
Yeah.
Look at my Mr. T chain going on here.
Mr. T chain. I pity the fool.
Yeah, so I didn't think it was Tyrion just having an eye for richness. I think it was Tyrion noticing that he had too many of these things, and he's clearly taking backhanders from somewhere.
Huh. Yeah, I always figured you had to get approval, from the.
He's the Grand Maester.
Yeah, he is. He just sends him a raven. I need another gold.
Yeah. Don't worry, I've got the gold. Yeah, and a couple of times I noticed that Tyrion really pulled rank on Pycelle, going back to the debates we've had about power.
Right.
Pycelle is old and creaky, but Tyrion makes him jump up and send those letters, both simultaneously to show who's boss, but also to give him the opportunity to go and examine the poison cabinet.
Right. Yeah, and then they have, when he gets back, Pycelle kind of tries everything to get Tyrion to tell him what's in the letter. He's like, well, but what about the council? And what about the king? And what about the queen regent? And Tyrion has an answer for everything. The king is 13. The queen has enough on her plate. She doesn't need to take any additional burdens on. And, he speaks with the king's voice as the hand of the king.
Yep. So Tyrion steals a potion. We don't see what it was. It doesn't appear to be the Tears of Lys, though, because he saw Tears of Lys, but he reached up and pulled a dusty bottle off the shelf of something else, it seemed. Now, we know that Varys told Ned that Jon Arryn died from being poisoned by the Tears of Lys, but Tyrion doesn't know that, so he doesn't have any reason to connect anything to do with that. He was just listing all the interesting-looking poisons on Pycelle's shelf.
Yeah. And then, so as this part of the chapter wraps up, Tyrion says, "Let me know when you get an answer." And Pycelle says, "Yes, of course." And he says, "And only me."
Right, yeah.
And Pycelle, the description is something like his hands were clutching his beard like a drowning man clutching for a rope. And, that's because we know he's Cersei's man. And so he's starting to panic. Like, what's he supposed to do here? He's been specifically told, do not tell anyone else. But he's also probably under very specific instructions by Cersei to tell me anything that Tyrion tells you.
So, I mean, the point of this whole chapter is for Tyrion to learn what we know, that Pycelle is Cersei's spy.
Right.
Okay? But the one thing that seems weird about this plan, that the way Tyrion's laid it out, is Pycelle has nothing to report to Cersei here. He doesn't know what he sent.
Yeah, other than the fact that a letter was sent to Dorne.
Yeah. Well, that might be enough, but I mean, what would be ideal for Tyrion is he lays out plans A, B, and C to the three of them, and then Cersei comes to him and says, "You are not doing plan B." Absolutely not, because then you know. But now it's going to be a little bit ambiguous, it feels like. So,
yeah, the way I thought about it was he gave each one a certain amount of information. Pycelle only knows that their letter was sent. Littlefinger knows that he's planning on sending Myrcella to the Vale and marrying her off to little Robert. Varys, because he's got his own spies, thinks he knows everything. Thinks he knows Myrcella is going to the Vale and Tommen is going to Dorne. So I guess it depends on what amount of information Cersei comes back with. If she comes back with and says, "What was in that letter you sent to?"
Then it's Pycelle.
Yes, and if she
comes back and says,
Myrcella's and only mentions Myrcella, then it's Littlefinger. And if she says, "You're not taking both my kids away from me," right, yeah, then he knows.
So now I'm going to agonize until we get to the TV show about whether or not I should say what they did in the TV show, because they did it slightly differently in the TV show, and it maybe reveals what was in the letter.
Okay.
But I don't know, because I haven't read ahead, so maybe it's not a spoiler in the book. Anyway, so Tyrion goes on with his day. The next person he sees is Bronn, who's waiting outside. He's basically acting as Tyrion's secretary, it seems. He's sort of taking messages from people and arranging appointments.
Yeah, listening to them, they're kind of walking and talking as they go. And it was a very different style of governing compared to the last chapter with Bran and Maester Luwin and Sir Roderick Cassel. The Winterfell guys seem to be taking it so much more as like personal, so much more personally, and seem to be so much more invested in the issues that they were dealing with. Now, Tyrion's dealing with a much bigger populace. I get that. And he got 30 complaints just today, where the Winterfell Brain Trust had maybe like 10 from the entire, that we heard anyway, from the entire collection of lords. And there were also lords that were coming to them. So I get there's a difference, but it felt like Tyrion was just kind of like half listening and be like, do this, do that, whatever, just make it go away.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think as a result, Tyrion misses a couple of opportunities here. Because, well, one of them, of course, is Allister Thorne. If he talked to Allister Thorne ASAP, he could have gone, whoa, everyone, put down your weapons. We've got something more serious to deal with.
Right. Yeah, and real quick about Allister Thorne is, yes, I know he and Allister Thorne crossed forks when they were eating dinner at Castle Black, and he's not a big fan of Allister Thorne, but he has to know he's there on on Jeor Mormont's business, And he's very much like Jeor Mormont. So you think he would maybe see what he wanted to show him and then stick him in a cell while he says, let me get back to you on that.
Yeah. And the other one, of course, is the visitor from the Bank of Bravos.
Right.
Who's come to talk to the king about the repayment of a loan. Now, he may not be Master of Coin, but given that he knows who is Master of Coin, if I was Tyrion, I would very much want to talk to that person and get some information for myself.
Yes, find out what the deal is. What deal do
find
you
and
Littlefinger have?
Then from that point onwards, you can make a couple of plans. One is help Littlefinger to come up with a repayment plan on the loan, or B, get the hell out of there because they're in big, big trouble.
It's a good point. That is a missed opportunity. You're right. Just a simple conversation with the guy,
Right.
Like, our Master of Coin, we'll get to him in a minute, but I just wanted to ask you a few questions.
Right. He came to see the king. That's who the guy came to. He would settle for the hand of the king.
Right. It's funny.
Settle for the Master of Coin, probably.
Tyrion says, when he says he wants to see the king, Tyrion makes the comment that as if Joffrey could count past 20. Well, one thing that I thought was kind of, I don't know, might have just been nothing. It might have been a coincidence. But while Bronn is watching, he's not watching these pretty girls walk by because he's busy watching the sparring going on in the yard. And he mentions, who's that boy over there with the checkered surcoat with the 3 eyes on the shield? The boy's name is Talad. And as I just mentioned, on the shield, he's got 3 eyes. And it reminded me that just last chapter, Bran got a 3rd eye in his dream. And it just felt like they were really close together.
Interesting, yeah. I didn't notice that, but that's very true.
I don't know what it means, but...
No. Maybe Bran is watching this fight. Maybe Bran is watching the pretty girls go by.
That's why the guy keeps making the same moves over and over again.
Exactly.
He's not paying any attention.
Just going through the motions. Like, look at those girls.
So then one of the other things he mentions, as we mentioned in the summary, that Bronn mentions to Tyrion is that Lady Tanda Stokeworth is trying to woo Tyrion for her daughter Lolly's, and so she keeps inviting him to dinner. And remember, last Tyrion chapter, we mentioned that she was calling him as he was leaving the small council chamber, and he was ignoring her. So maybe that's why she was calling him, is to invite him to dinner.
Oh, yes, probably it was.
But also, apparently, she's moved on from Littlefinger. Because remember, earlier in the Game of Thrones, she was trying to woo Littlefinger as well. So I guess she's moved on to Tyrion.
So the other group that visited was was a group of bakers and basically food sellers from the city. They're obviously looking for more food because they're obviously not able to feed the people, and they reported to Bronn, he's reporting on to Tyrion, that a baker was roasted in his own oven the day before for charging too much for bread. Tyrion asks, well, was he? And Bronn says, well, he's not really in a position to deny it at this point,
He's oddly silent about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a concern. So Tyrion's concern is that they're going to create traitors within the city walls. If there's an enemy that marches on King's Landing, these traitors will then, rebel and cause
that goes
problems.
very much to the next conversation he has with Cersei, in fact.
Yes, right.
So,
and it shows that, like I had said in the last Tyrion chapter, his efforts of allowing as much hunting as you want in the Kingswood and building fishing boats is just not cutting it for the amount of people that are starving, unfortunately. Yeah. And, I was thinking about Joffrey as king, and he is, Joffrey, of all currently 4 kings, is uniquely unprepared to understand the plight of starving small folk. Because Stannis and Renly both survived the siege at Storm's End, where they almost starved to death. Robb Stark is Ned's son, and so therefore you would imagine he's pretty sympathetic to the small folk. But also, we've seen him allow the Riverlords to return to their homes to protect their families and their holdfasts and stuff. And it just goes back to the riddle of the power lies where the people believe it lies. And if they no longer believe the power lies in the king, 500,000 small folk make for one really big folk.
Right, or if they become so hungry that they no longer care to believe the lie. Even if they still believe it, their empty belly will overrule the lie at some point.
Absolutely, yep.
So Cersei rides up. She's angry with Tyrion as usual. This time it's because of how he handled Janos Slynt.
Yeah, I'm guessing...
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
I'm guessing that has more to do with him overruling her promotion of Slynt than her actual caring about Slynt.
Yeah. So her travelling companions comprise Sir Boros Blunt of the Kingsguard, who we know was the one who beats Sansa without hesitation or remorse, so he's a nice guy. Balon Swan, who was in the top 3 of the archery to Joffrey's name day tournament.
He was top 3 at the Hands name day tournament, but he did participate in Joffrey's name day tournament as well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think he knocked Janos Slynt's son Morris off his horse.
Right.
I think
he jousted at Joffrey's name.
Yeah, because they never even finished at that tournament.
Right. Yeah.
But he's also the one that made the joke at the Stokeworth dinner about I think it was Giles Rosby said gave a toast to the king, and Balon Swan said something like, "We're going to need 3 toasts then," or something like that. And Varys told Tyrion that, and Tyrion's like, "Listen, I'm not going to get into dealing with those kind of situations."
I wonder if Tyrion feels a sort of frisson of, I'm glad he's friends with you, Cersei, because he makes jokes about you behind your back.
Maybe. No, Balon Swan's an interesting character here because he's likely held here by force, like the Redwyne twins are, because he is from the Dornish marshes and owes his fealty to the Baratheons as the family. The House owns their fealty to the Baratheons.
I would remind you that in many Baratheons' minds, King Joffrey is a Baratheon.
That's a good point. You're right. Yes, you're right. Yeah,
but
it might not be.
But he might not be, but he might be. I mean,
yes,
clearly some Baratheons upped and left when Joffrey became king.
Yes,
Renly, to name but one.
His father, Julian, was one of the few Stormlords that actually met with Davos, that Davos reported to Crescent back in the prologue, but he offered no support to Stannis. So he clearly doesn't buy into Stannis as king. So you're right. It's either Joffrey or Renly at this point for them.
So Giles Rosby is there. He's the one who toasts with not enough glasses. Halline is the pyromancer from the Alchemist Guild.
Yeah, do you remember back, I think it might have been Tyrion 1 of this book, Tyrion found out that Cersei had ordered 10,000 barrels of wildfire, and the pyromancers are who make wildfire. Right. So that's why he's in her retinue.
Yeah. And now Sir Lancel Lannister.
Yes.
Kevin's
promotion.
Son, the Cersei and Tyrion's cousin, who was knighted soon after he plied Robert Baratheon with wine just before he was gored by the boar. So,
right.
further fuel to the fire that was being done on purpose, I would say.
Yes.
So Cersei's off to view the defences. She doesn't care about the small folk, but she definitely wants to not lose any ensuing battle. She's mad that Tyrion isn't working harder on the city's defences. Of course, Tyrion is working on the city's defences, I assume, unless he just wants a big chain for no reason.
Yeah, it does feel like that is a defensive measure. We don't know what yet, but certainly feels it.
He's going to wrap it round Pycelle's neck.
Yeah, she's like stressing, to him. She's like, and Renly is riding up the Rose Road with 100,000 people.
Point of order. It said that in the book. You just said something that was said in the book. He's riding up the Rose Road. But given that they're coming from the Reach and they're heading to King's Landing, which is at the sea, that would be down.
Oh.
They would be coming down the Rose Road. I mean, you
would
would naturally describe it as up or down depending on its angle.
Right. When I do it, I usually do it based on map location.
North,
and south.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much, I mean, the Rose Road is mostly east-west, right? It's probably heading slightly north.
Yes. They'll be heading northeast.
As it goes to King's Landing, right? But it is going downhill, so I think that should say down.
Yes, good point. It's a good point there. But she's panicked that there's, he's got a army of 100,000 at his back. And, well, first of all, I thought, is there anybody that could realistically pick out a crowd of 100,000 at that, in Westeros at the moment? Like, that's got to just be a general estimation.
You got to do it statistically. What you got to do is you got to make a point, count how many go past in 30 seconds, and then count how long it takes the whole retinue to go past.
See?
And then multiply it up, you see. That's the way you do that.
This is why we have Dr. Simon McGrother on our show.
It wouldn't be deadly accurate, but it'd be more accurate than going 1, 2...
Hold still. Yeah, yep. That's how you do it.
So Tyrion points out that Renly's not a great danger at the moment because he's taking such a leisurely place towards King's Landing. He's feasting at every castle. He holds a court at every crossroads. He seems to be just enjoying the sort of like the fun and trappings of this rather than actually trying to get down to the business of winning the realm, which is a little bit stupid, to be honest, because King's Landing is ripe right now for the taking.
Yes.
And there is, Tywin Lannister, we haven't heard from him this whole book, yeah, but he must be feeling some pressure to go and save his 2 not captured children from death and dismemberment at the hands of 100,000 Baratheon supporters. And, as you said, the 500,000 starving small folk who are going to turn on, who are going to support Renly's claim as soon as he arrives.
Yes, you're right. Tyrion points out the smart side of it, that, yeah, we'll just stay back and let us fight our other battles, and if we lose, then he'll just waltz in, and if we win, then he'll take us out because we're weakened. But you're right, there's absolutely a downside to it as well, because right now it couldn't be much more ripe for the taking.
Yeah, but that is a good counterpoint, because while Tywin is still tied up, he's losing troops, not all the time. It's not like the war is active up there particularly, but there's going to be attrition of Tywin's forces. Meanwhile, Renly is adding people to his army as he goes. Right.
Plus, he could be waiting for Robb Stark and the Lannisters to butt heads again.
Yeah.
So, but the description of his leisurely pace reminded me of both what Cresson and Donald Noy from the Night's Watch said about Renly. Well, they didn't say the exact same thing, but the things they said kind of fit with this whole thing here, that he loves the idea of playing king. He loves the pledges of fealty and the tourneys and the pomp and circumstance. But what kind of leader is he going to be when push comes to shove?
And all of that makes perfect sense to what he's doing. He's just enjoying being king on a long parade through the countryside.
Exactly. Yes. That is why Tyrion thinks that Stannis is the bigger threat. Because even though Stannis doesn't have any kind of ground presence right now, he is a tested battle commander. He's an adult who's been there, done that, won battles, and has made tough decisions.
I think the other thing possibly that Tyrion fears is that although they've made rival claims and probably are at each other's throats a little bit, that they may join forces. If maybe Renly has had word from Stannis, I'll be attacking King's Landing in 3 weeks. Take your time. I'll meet you there.
Oh, man. I don't know that we've got the time to get into if Renly was supporting Stannis like he probably should be. I mean, this war might be over by now.
Yeah.
But the power between the two of them.
Yeah, but he wouldn't even have to support it. You could do that. You could say, yes, I'll do that, and then turn the tables on him,
Sure.
Say, thank you for your help getting in here. Thank you for that new fleet I have in the... That looks good.
Yeah, that was Davos's concern, that we could take King's Landing, but we don't have the men to hold King's Landing. Yeah. So, but that, I was thinking about his leisurely pace. One final thought on that was that these are... We saw what happened to the Riverlands folks. They eventually needed to get back to their lives. Now, of course, they got back to their lives because their lands and people were being killed and burned. But this is the reach that a lot of these people are coming from, and it is it is no longer summer. They're in a fall now. So how many of these folks are going to at some point be like, I got to get back and harvest these crops that I've been planting. This is the breadbasket of the realm here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you might want to speed it along a little bit.
Yeah. So Renly's force is made up of Storm's End and High Guard, and 100,000 seems like probably an exaggeration, but possibly the largest and strongest army of the 4 rival kings. And like we said, if he comes together with Stannis, they could crush King's Landing between them. Cersei says the only family from the Reach that's not declared for Renly is the Redwynes, and that's because she's got the twins.
Horus and Hobber, or Horror and Slobber, as
Horror and Slobber, exactly.
Jane used to call them.
But that could be very important, because the Redwynes have the fleet of the Reach.
Right.
And so that does give her a sea presence, which she otherwise would not. Now, I don't know if how firm a grip she's got of them. They're sitting out at the moment. Would they actually come to her help? I don't know.
I don't know that they would. I guess it depends on how much she threatens the boys' lives. Right. But at the very least, if Renly also had the Redwyne fleet at his disposal and had a land and water
I see what you mean, yes. Then he wouldn't need Stannis.
Right, he wouldn't, yes.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on, because we're never going to get through this unless we hurry up a bit. Next, he meets with Littlefinger in Tyrion's own Tower of the Hand. He offers Littlefinger a drink, and Littlefinger points out that if you have a drink with little Tyrion, you can end up on the wall.
Yes.
So he's not doing that. They spar a little bit over the dagger. Petyr Baelish offers it to Tyrion. Yours, if you like. And Tyrion replies, mine? No, think not. Never mine.
Yes.
He knows full well that Cat accused him of this being of the Valyrian steel dagger belonging to him being used in the assassination of Bran. But does Littlefinger know that? He's safe to assume that she told him, that she told Tyrion. But rather than talking about it directly, they're having this little subtext fight.
Yeah, you'd have to make the assumption that they both know what the other person knows, and they both know the other person also knows.
Right.
So, I was wondering why Littlefinger was walking around with a dagger, especially here at the office of the guy he framed with it. So
that's how ballsy he is, I guess.
Yeah, it had to have been intentional. Well, you don't just accidentally flash that dagger around in Tyrion's office here.
But you see, this again goes to not really understanding Petyr Baelish's motivations for things. Because, okay, is his motivation love for Catelyn Stark? Maybe. So all of this was to get rid of Ned Stark so he could move in on Catelyn? Is his motivation just causing problems in the realm? That makes sense here, because he's just adding to the problems. First of all, I said this was your dagger, and now I'm wearing it in front of you,
Right. Yeah. Chaos. He's an agent of chaos.
Chaos monkey.
Yes.
So Tyrion asks how close Littlefinger was to the Tully girls, and Littlefinger says that he had their maidenheads, which I'm not sure that Lysa and Cat would say that was the truth.
Well, we definitely know Cat wouldn't say that, because Tyrion thinks that's a lie. He's pretty sure it's a lie, and it's so well delivered that he almost believed it if Cat hadn't told him otherwise. And back in the chapter where they were making their way up through the Mountains of the Moon, Tyrion told her that Petyr lied about him owning the dagger, and she said, why would Petyr lie to me? And he said, you of all people should know about his lies. And when she questioned what that meant, he said, all of the court at the Red Keep has heard of how he's taken your maidenhead. And
no, maidenhood is actually the right word, I think.
She said that's a lie. So yes, she specifically told Tyrion that was not true.
Huh? Yeah. So,
but it's twice in 2 chapters that Tyrion has commented on Littlefinger's lying abilities.
When he was suggesting the lie about Shireen's parentage.
Yes, he said, you are quite a skilled liar.
Mm-hmm. So Tyrion wants Littlefinger to use his influence with the Tully girls to And Littlefinger assumes that he's talking about trading Jaime for Sansa, and that's not going to work. That, like you said, Joff's never going to give up his plaything, and Catelyn wouldn't trade Jaime for certainly not for one of her daughters.
Right, not for one. She did tell Robb we should do it for two.
Right.
If we get our girls back,
yeah.
we should make the trade. And he said, I can't. They will take my crown if I did that. But I'm thinking the Joff won't give up his plaything comment. If that was offered, Sansa for Jaime, Cersei would press very hard for Joffrey to do it.
She wouldn't listen to Joffrey. She would just do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I mean, even if I'm just thinking he's 13. They could probably do a bait and switch, like, whoa, look at this girl. You can have her beaten
you can
as
hit
well.
with your crossbow.
Yes. So, but regardless, without Arya, it's not going to matter. They're not doing the deal for just one of the girls. So.
Yeah. So the second part of what he would give to Lysa, well, okay, there's two parts to what Tyrion is offering Lysa. One is the identity of Jon Arryn's true killer. We don't know who it is yet. I'm not sure Tyrion knows who it is yet.
Right.
But the other one is Tommen as
Myrcella.
Mixed up.
Yeah.
Myrcella to marry Robert to go as again a ward hostage to the Vale, and to ultimately marry little Robert. Pretty good deal if she can get over her all Lannisters are murderers thing.
Yes. Right. Well, that's the thing. Yeah, she's going to blame Myrcella when she gets there.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't she, right?
She's already claimed, she's already accused Cersei and Tyrion. And we're pretty sure we've got our heavy doubts about Cersei because she confessed a whole bunch of stuff to Ned, including incest and that the kids were not Robert's, but she did not confess to killing Jon Arryn. So, and, we've heard things said about Varys that were incriminating. Like when Illyrio back in the dungeon when Arya was listening said, if one hand can die, why not another? You've danced this dance before, my friend. So, can't rule him out. And as we've mentioned before, you can't entirely rule out the grieving wife either, because we've seen how she behaves around little Robert. And there was the prospect of losing him to be fostered somewhere else. Yeah, he was going to be fostered on Dragonstone with Stannis. Now, whether you kill your spouse over it, I don't know, but we've seen her with Robert. She's intense. So
I can think of a couple of spouses who definitely would.
But it also could be someone we haven't thought of yet. So
true.
But all this is to not. They don't want. It's not about fighting the Tullys or the Starks. He knows,
which of course she would say no to, no matter what.
Right. Yes.
She's definitely not going to do that.
He said we've got plenty of enemies, so this is all about getting the Knights of the Vale to help against Renly and or Stannis. And he also, one little final cherry on the top is he promises to make little Robert Warden of the East, which currently is Jaime designation.
Yes. Always should have been Robert Arryn. We know that.
Yes.
So Littlefinger, of course, wants to know what's in it for him. And Tyrion offers him Harrnehal and Lord Protector of the Trident. So Littlefinger's a little bit puzzled. You'd make me one of the greatest lords in the realm. So, which is what I would think too. Like, this isn't that big a deal. I mean, sure, I'm brokering something that's really going to tip the balance of this war, but you're offering me an awful lot for that. You're offering me the same thing you offered Janos Slynt.
Yeah, we saw what happened to Janos. Yeah, exactly. It's definitely it seems like it's too good to be true, and this is coming from the same guy. This offer is coming from the same guy who knows that you set him up, got him captured and almost killed,
and know that,
right? But yet, as Tyrion puts it, he looked like a boy that had taken a bite out of a honeycomb. He was trying to watch for the bees, but the honey was just too sweet. Right.
Which for me is a fascinating thing because I thought Littlefinger was immune to this kind of thing. Obviously, Littlefinger has made himself rich and powerful, depending on how you define power, of course.
Right.
But he really is caught by this. He's like, oh, I do want that. I do want that. I fear that I'm being drawn into a trap. I feel like Tyrion's lying to me, but I've got to go for that anyway because it's there in front of me.
Yep, he found Littlefinger's weakness. Ambition.
Yeah.
He came from nothing. He came from the tiniest, the smallest of small lords, and he's made quite the rise. And he's an ambitious guy. So he says, "I'll do it. Give me 2 weeks, and I'll do it."
So next up is Varys. I think Varys shows off that he's got better spies than Littlefinger, and you'd like to think he does. He's the master of spies. Littlefinger's got more money than Varys.
Right. They're both well suited for their jobs. Yeah, you wonder, is Podrick Payne or that serving girl of Pycelle's, are they passing along the info?
Pod can barely talk to Tyrion.
Maybe it's all a ploy. Maybe he's a very confident little kid. He just pretends not to be, to throw him off his game. But there's also, we know that Maegor the Misunderstood killed all the people that built the Red Keep, so that he would be the only one that knows the secret passages and stuff of the Red Keep. So there's plenty of those, and maybe Varys has stumbled across them and can actually listen in on conversations.
Yeah. Tyrion acts annoyed and disappointed that Varys knew what he did, but because at the end of all this he says 3, he always intended for Varys to find this stuff out. He was never really keeping it from him.
Right. Yes. You wonder if maybe he leaked it so that the spies could find it. But the overall offer is to Doran Martell that at least Tyrion lets Littlefinger lets Varys believe that he's figured out is a seat on the small council now that Jaina Slynt has vacated it. Gregor Clegane and or Amory Lorch, they don't mention him, but he was also involved in the death of Elia and her children.
That's right. Yeah.
Varys says that lands and gold are a given, and that the final piece is Tommen. In return, aid the Lannisters in the war. So the seat on the small council is pretty straightforward. There's an open spot. Okay, it's yours if you help us out. But I wonder if he's run all this stuff past Tywin at all, because there's a lot of commitments being made here, and one of them is one of Tywin's lead henchmen, Gregor Clegane, is going to be turned over to the Martells, and pleasant things won't happen to him here. So
right, but I would. Again, a lot of this plan is not necessarily to be enacted. It's just to catch the spy. It's just to catch whoever Cersei's spy is.
Yes.
But the flip side of that is this. If Tywin Lannister is a cold, calculating, hard man, if you tell him, hey, the mountain has to die, but that will get us 50,000 Dornish troops, Tywin would cut the mountain's heart out there and then in front of everyone.
That's what Tyrion's banking on as well, because he says, even my father would be the first to tell you 50,000 swords is worth one rabid dog. So
right,
yeah.
They think that prying the Tommen, who they both think is a good boy, away from Cersei and Joffrey now, could give him the opportunity to grow into a good man. So that's possibly a fringe benefit of this.
Right. Yes, and as Varys points out, he's also currently heir to Joffrey's throne. And it would be a shame if something unfortunate were to befall Joffrey. So,
yes, it would be a shame.
But also, Tommen is very much more influenceable than Joffrey, who doesn't seem to be at all influenceable, other than his own whims. And
of course, if Varys is right with all his deductions, and all of these things do come to pass, that's 2 of Cersei's children leaving King's Landing to be fostered / hostages of other people. She is not going to go for that, and she's not going to be happy with it.
No, she's not. I was wondering if Tyrion might need Tywin to step in as father and say, sorry, this is what has to happen, because I don't know if Tyrion has the power over Cersei to get these 2 things pulled off, if it's actually the plan, of course.
Yeah, so if the Dornish troops did come in on the Lannister side, that would be a big problem for Renly, because now he would be besieged from the south and from the northeast. So it definitely could tip the war, for sure.
Yeah. So, but basically, like we said at the beginning, he's told different versions to all 3 members here. Pycelle only knows about the letter to Dorne. Littlefinger knows Myrcella is going to the Vale. Varys knows about Tommen to the Dorne, Myrcella to the Vale, and I guess we'll just see what version Cersei gets, how much info she gets.
Yeah.
It's not the most straightforward plan, but I guess I could see it working. I could see.
Yeah.
He's doing all of this because he's doing what Tywin asked him to do. Tywin asked him when he sent him off to go rule in King's Landing. He said, "Root out if there's any small council members that are treating us false." And Tyrion said, "I know, heads, spikes, walls." And he's
of course,
Tyrion.
The one thing I will say about that is spying for Cersei isn't necessarily treating the Lannisters false. It may not be for the good of the Lannisters, but it's, you could, if I was Pycelle and you catch me bang to rights spying for Cersei, I'd be like, she's your sister. She's
a Lannister.
I'm supposed to do this stuff. The people who didn't betray you to Cersei are the traitors, not me.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, good point.
All right, so to background, what have you got for us, Mackelly?
Well, have you ever wondered how
No.
it came to be that the son of one of the smallest of small lords, according to Tyrion's wording, ended up being fostered alongside the children of Hoster Tully, the Lord Paramount of the Trident?
Well, now you mention it.
Well, let me back up a bit and I'll tell you. So Peter's great-grandfather was a Bravasi sellsword in the service of Lord Corbray of the Vale, and we've met Sir Lyn Corbray in the Eyrie when we were in those chapters. And as we learn in this chapter, Peter's grandfather was simply just a hedge knight. But according to semi-canon sources, it was the grandfather who managed to acquire a tiny bit of land in the Fingers and build an equally tiny castle on it. The Fingers, of course, being a group of small peninsulas in the northern part of the Vale. Now, due to his Bravasi heritage, that night, Peter's grandfather took the Titan of Braavos as his sigil, which Peter then changed to the Mockingbird. But thanks to the little castle that he built, Peter's father became the smallest of small lords. And so here's how we get to where we're going. So Peter's father participated in the War of the Ninepenny Kings, and during that campaign, he befriended none other than Hoster Tully. And it was that friendship that led to Peter being sent to be fostered as a ward at Riverrun.
There you go. Tyrion mentions that Tyrion actually thinks through Petyr Baelish's meteoric rise since he's arrived in King's Landing, and how he's used his power and influence to get people who are loyal to him in various positions of power. And one of the ones he mentions is that there are 4 keepers of the keys, and they are selected by the Master of Coin. So they're all 4 keepers of the keys are now Petyr Baelish loyalists.
Right.
Then not much information is given about keepers of the keys, but according to semi-canon source of Blood of Dragons, which is approved by George Martin, the keepers control the keys that open certain doors and chests that belong to the royal household. They also oversee the items that these locks guard. The first controls the king's jewels. The second, the king's purse funds for the king's personal interest. The third holds the key to the Red Keep's armory, and the last holds the keys to the king's manors outside of King's Landing, for example, Summerhall. Their responsibilities
Before it was burnt to the ground.
That's right. You really don't need the key anymore.
Right.
Unfortunately, he also had the key to the fire extinguisher, and he lost it. He wronged it. Their responsibilities include hiring assistants overseeing investment of personal wealth and acquiring such things as the king desires. Comparison with the television show. So, be careful. There are potential spoilers in here, because the television show doesn't do this quite the same. It very much has the same idea of Tyrion telling the 3 small council members different stories to see which one gets its way to Cersei.
If you're afraid of spoilers, you can just skip to the next chapter on the chapter markers that I put in here. You could just go straight to Pedantry Corner. So
that's good.
Do that now if you're afraid of this being a spoiler.
Okay. The only difference is that the nature of the 3 plans. Basically, to Pycelle, he says, I'm going to send Myrcella to Dorne to be a ward, hostage, and ultimately a wife. To Littlefinger, he says exactly what he said in the book. I'm going to send Myrcella to the Vale to be a ward, hostage, and ultimately a wife. To Varys, he says, I'm going to marry Myrcella to Theon Greyjoy.
Oh, wow.
So it's all Myrcella. It doesn't involve anyone else. It's all Myrcella. It's where she's being shipped off to. And all three of them get a different story.
Okay. Theon Greyjoy's kind of out of the blue there. But hey, they're another group.
They are, again, the naval thing. The naval thing becomes an issue, see, and that's why he's able to sell that to Varys as an idea, because it does make a certain amount of sense.
Yes.
I think the red wines are kind of dropped from the TV show, so you need that.
Okay. Yeah. I get you.
All right, to pedantry corner. The Tears of Lys bothers me here just a little bit. On the one hand, it could be just further evidence of Pycelle's blatant perfidy, because he denied any knowledge of a poison that could possibly cause the symptoms that, whilst having a bottle of it on his shelf. So that's the only explanation I can have. Otherwise, it's kind of like it doesn't make any sense. So that must be the answer. It's not a mistake by George Martin. It's just that Pycelle is a liar.
Yes. Back in the chapter when he and Ned were talking about this, way back in the Game of Thrones, Pycelle at first said he was certain that it was illness that killed Jon Arryn. And then when Ned brought up poison, he was like, seemed really surprised by the idea and said, this is not the Free Cities. And then he said something like, all of the hedge maesters know the common signs of poison or something like that. And Jon Arryn didn't display any of such signs. But then we learned from Varys later that Tears of Lys has a different set of side effects, or symptoms, I mean. And you would think, as Pycelle has it on his shelf here, he would know what those symptoms are.
Right. I mean, for instance, I'm not sort of like, encouraging him to be like a euthanizing Nazi, but there are people in King's Landing who get put to death. I'm sure that if you, as Grand Maester, said, I would really like to find out how this stuff works,
I have no idea what happens.
They would give you one of those people, like 1 drop, 2 drops. Let's see what happens. So it just doesn't make any sense to me that he wouldn't know how it works and what its effects were. So, but he could have been lying. He could have been dissembling.
Yep, I get you. I follow you.
He could have been dissembling, is what I tried to say there. News and notes. I get to read these most often. Why don't you read this one?
Well, we don't have any actual news and notes this chapter.
No, but we have a nice review.
We do have a nice review, and this is already running pretty long, so it's probably good that we don't have a bunch of news and notes. So we'll get straight to the review, and this review comes from Ellie11296 from Apple Podcasts, and it's titled Great Podcast, so I like it already. Following along with the podcast while reading the book, listening to the corresponding episodes to the chapters I have read. Great way to experience the series on episode 13 of the podcast.
Keep going, Ellie. It gets better and better.
That's right. I think she's probably in the minority group of our group of listeners. Most of them are either already listened to it all or just listening to it through us. The reading along folks, I'm glad to see that they're reading along folks out there. That's really cool.
All right, let's draw this one to a conclusion. I'm not sure this plan will work. I suspect that all 3 of these guys are going to blab to Cersei in one way or another, to a certain extent. And Varys in particular could go, well, Cersei, did you hear? And she goes, yes, I did.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Oh, I guess each one doesn't know what the other one knows, maybe. Or maybe Varys does. Varys knew these things ahead of time, so he would likely know where he got them from. So he might know who Tyrion told what to.
But again, Tyrion just agreed with what Varys suggested was in the letter.
Right, yes. But the first thing that Varys says to Tyrion is, you're a cruel man for making the Maester fret like he is. So he must know what he did and didn't tell the Maester. So yeah, you're right. It definitely wasn't the most straightforward way he could have handled this. 3 separate, very individualized stories would have been the way to figure it out.
Right. For instance, marry the 3 children to different Martells.
Right.
Marry Joffrey to a Martell, marry Tommen to a Martell, marry Myrcella to a Martell. Kind of easier, really. Although that does miss out on the Littlefinger connection to Lysa Arryn, which of course is a useful. It's a useful hook, and it's why only Littlefinger could broker that deal, nobody else.
Right, but if you're only trying to figure out who the mole is,
right, yeah,
your method would work right there.
So what did Tyrion steal? I'm fascinated. Right. He doesn't appear to be the Tears of Lys, because the book says he saw the Tears of Lys and then pulled down a dusty bottle of something else, it seemed.
Yes.
It didn't
I did not get the impression he took the Tears of Lys.
I'm just going to keep saying Lys while you say Lice, just FYI.
I only say Lice because Roy Dotrice says Lice, and I listened to the chapter about 10 times this week. So
I can't imagine that he needs Viagra, Tyrion.
It doesn't seem like it.
So. And plus, honestly, if that's what it was, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be dusty on Pycelle's shelf.
Yep, see? Yeah, you're reading with a really careful eye there. Yes, I see what you did. Will Littlefinger have any success wooing Lysa Arryn to the Lannister side? It seemed like she was more terrified to get involved earlier when Cat was with her than anything else. She wanted no part of this war. So
very true.
We don't know their relationship, Lysa and Littlefinger's yet. We don't know anything about it, but we know Cat had absolutely no luck trying to get Lysa to join the family cause.
I'm going to bet my bottom dollar their relationship is not what Littlefinger describes it to be.
Oh.
I'm not sure how it would be different, but I know Littlefinger's lying because he was speaking.
But yeah, even if he doesn't have success getting them into the war on the Lannister side, if he can just keep them out of joining the Tully Stark cause, then that helps some. Because
and actually, it's not a bad outcome for Lysa. I mean, the tricky part is sending off your troops to fight for the Lannisters, which is never going to be very popular with the people of the Vale.
Right.
But actually, the marriage kind of makes a lot of sense, especially if you get to foster Myrcella so that the two of them grow up together. Because Myrcella seems like, relatively speaking, one of the nicer Lannister children. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Not Joffrey, I should say. That
is rough, sending Myrcella to the Eyrie, because, I mean, he knows firsthand what Lysa and little Robert are like, and he is willing to hand over his niece into that mess. So, but for the good of the realm, I guess.
Yeah. But if Tyrion can sway the Vale and or Dorne to the Lannister cause, that might swing things back in their favour. Dorne would harass Renly. The Vale would keep Stannis occupied and could also help them against Renly. Give Tywin's new army in Lannisport time to form. Yeah, and
then those two, Tywin's army and the new Lannisport army, would have Robb surrounded, kind of. Yeah. But what happens if Cersei finds out about this plan? She already hates Tyrion, and she loves her kids.
See, Tyrion has come up with a fantastic plan to root out Cersei's mole, but he's forgotten that he will be murdered in his sleep by Cersei when she finds out, and he won't have any opportunity to act on his newfound information. Why are you stabbing me? Where do you think they're going? I got to know.
Wait, talk quick, I'm dying. Yeah, that is a problem.
Yeah. So, and but seriously, how would he use that information? Is he going to just use it to sort of like maybe feed her false information from that point forward? Maybe treat this person like an enemy from now on? Or will he get rid of them? Like you said, head spikes walls. I mean, just get them off the small council to erode her power further. He got rid of Janos Slynt. Now he gets rid of the other Cersei loyalist. And the small council becomes his to control, perhaps.
That's what he needs. He needs his people in high places and low places, in all places, really. Yeah. Fascinating chapter. It
was very fascinating. And it was nice to spend a whole couple of days with you. As always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com and follow us on Twitter at @ghostharrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and now Discord.
That's right. And if you wouldn't mind going out and leaving us a 5-star rate and a glowing review, we certainly would appreciate that, and we might read that review here on a future episode.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.